Hello and welcome back to the Side Out Stronger podcast. As always, I am your host, Coach Jordan. Today we have a bit of a different episode. So we have some of my good friends, the Allen-Flannicks, I should say, Dan and Taylor. And today we're going to kind of cover the idea of if you're just starting out at a new gym or you're looking for a gym or looking for a coach, what do you do? Because we know how intimidating and difficult of an experience it could be when you're starting out. If you're starting out in training, if you're really taking that step to take control of your health. So we want to talk about some of the details, what to look for, some red flags, and everything in between. So enjoy this one. Let's get into it. Hi, guys. For those of us that have not had the, pure luck to be meeting you guys, this is Dan and this is Taylor. These are some of my great friends, former coach, athletic professional, network people, and I'm really excited to have these guys on today because I've done some work with Dan and Taylor before, and I've learned a lot from them. And they've got a really cool, gym to start with, and they got a really successful community business model. And the main thing that you guys are here for is we're going to talk about how do you get into the gym. And how do we kind of start this journey if you're new entirely to the gym and you're freaked out by going and you're not really sure how to find a place that works for you, and maybe you're intimidated or just had a bad experience previously and you're not really sure where to start. So welcome, guys. First of all, who are you? Who are you? What do you do?
You can go first, Taco.
I'm no one. I'm just kidding. I'm Taylor. I'm a chiropractor, and then I also coach here at the gym. That's a good synopsis.
Really selling yourself here.
Yeah, it's
I'm
gonna be
human.
like modesty central.
I'm Dan. I'm a strength and conditioning coach. We have Taylor and I, and my brother-in-law Jeff. He's a chiropractor. We all kind of run the gym together. My sister is involved too. She handles all like the admin and finances and honestly all the stuff that I just can't do. And and we've had the gym about we're on year 5 now, and before that college, and I was coaching at different colleges as an intern and grad assistant and stuff like that. But we've been having this gym for about 5 years now.
And just for a bit of context because most of my audience right now is at least in Ontario. Growing quickly, though, Dan and Taylor are down in a small community called Skinny Atlas, which is just outside of Auburn, which is for us folks up here south of
Syracuse.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Sweet.
Yep.
It matters. So I want a quick version here, but we can go into this forever, I'm sure. What got you guys into training, and what got you guys starting your own place? Like, why didn't you just go to some other place?
You want to go first?
Well, I was in chiropractic school when Dan really opened the gym. I was busy. I would clean, and I would come and study while I was trying to coach, which didn't work very well. It was more coaching than studying. But
and training for me, I started training people. Probably shouldn't have been. I definitely shouldn't have been. But I was like 18, my first clients. And I had been working out. I always kind of like exercise as in sports and stuff like that. Did some weight room stuff, but never took it seriously. And then when I was 18 in college, I think I was just under a lot of duress and just kind of stressed out. And I was a college baseball player, and I was getting burnt out. Was going through some personal stuff with a family member who was really sick, who ended up passing away. And I had a bout of like just random like idiopathic pancreatitis is what the diagnosis was, which is just like, we don't know why, but you have pancreatitis. Typically it's associated with alcoholism, but that wasn't the reason that I had it. So I got really sick and was in the hospital, and I couldn't eat for like a week. And that happened like twice. I had 2 bouts of it in the summer, and I was really weak after. I remember my mom had a friend who was a trainer, and she set me up with her, and the agreement was I would clean the gym and she'd train me. And my very first day, I was an athlete, so doing push-ups, 20, 30 push-ups was like, I could do that. It wasn't much of a challenge. But at that point, I remember doing like a couple push-ups, and I had to run to the bathroom and I was throwing up. So then I came back from that and really got a lot healthier and stronger and really dialed in my diet at the time. And so that got me into training. And then I also saw my cousin, who was the one who was really sick. He had cancer, and he'd be doing like push-ups and sit-ups and just staying strong while in the hospital when he was going through chemo, and the nurses would be yelling at him to get back in his room. He'd be like, I got to stay strong. And that was, I just remember seeing that and seeing how positive it was for him to be training, really, some sort of training. And so I wanted to dive into that. So I transferred school, stopped playing baseball, just got kind of burnt out and went into exercise science for my degree program. And then that's kind of, from there, went to grad school and then opened the gym not long after that. So that's kind of my path into training. Taylor's she started really lifting in college.
It was in college, yeah. It was right before we met.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea what I was doing. I was using those like pre-weighted barbells, and I was just like moving them around. In no way was it actually an exercise. But I was having a really hard time, I think, with just like friends and connection and that kind of thing, like the whole like freshman feeling. So I had like a really fun freshman year, but it was not very much myself, I guess. I wouldn't say that I felt like at home or like I was really true to myself in that year. And I really noticed that in my sophomore year of college. So I started kind of just reevaluating my choices, my decisions, why I was making them. And then I started going to the gym and taking care of myself. I would carry a jar of peanut butter around in my backpack.
Still does.
But it helped me. I took a nutrition course that was just along the path for my major, which kind of helped me reconceptualize like what things I should be fueling my body with and how I should be treating it and things like that. So I was going to the gym every day on my lunch break, and on the days where I was going home, I would get up early and make the gym before class. And I just started really making it a priority. And I didn't really notice that I was losing weight or that my like body composition was changing or really anything throughout the process until like a year and a half in, maybe. Like it took me a really long time to really see that, even though little things like my clothes started fitting differently and stuff like that kind of came along the way too. And then Dan and I met while I was going through some of that. Him and our friend Jim taught me how to actually squat with like the big barbell and all that stuff, and deadlift and bench press and overhead press. And so I started going to the gym like 6 days a week. And then I started doing 2-a-days where I was running in the morning, and I was like, I don't know, I've always been psycho. But it became like the best positive outlet for myself, because it allowed me to challenge myself in ways that I hadn't before. Like, I don't think I intentionally put myself in difficult situations or difficult enough situations that I really had to like challenge myself to get out of them. So I think it definitely changed my perspective on like just my potential in school, my potential in the weight room, and my vision on like my whole self-esteem kind of changed from there, and my capabilities. And like Dan said, after undergrad, Dan went to Baylor for a year and interned with the teams down there, which was cool. I finished up at Ithaca. We moved to Nashville. I worked as a chiropractic assistant, and Dan was originally he was going to be a teacher. And then after that, he just went into basically training and started his business really in Nashville. That's kind of like where I feel like you really started some things there.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to go back to chiropractic school. So we decided to move back up to the Finger Lakes because there was a school up here. And after that, after training out of Syracuse for a little bit and the commute being really far from where we were living, the gym just kind of organically happened after that in a really tiny office underneath of a bar.
Yeah. Like in a literally we were in basements. The first two locations we had, one was like the stairs were from the 1800s, and I'm not exaggerating.
Sketchy.
And like, I'm like, there's no way that thank goodness the code enforcement officer is not coming here, because we'd be shut down in a heartbeat. And
The barbells are going up the stairs once. That's all.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, we had a way out, but we were like a room within a room. It was crazy. Now we're in like 2,500 square foot. Like we got a turf room and a weight room. It's like
and we're on like level ground. We're not in the basement anymore.
Crazy.
Which we were for the first two locations.
Yeah, it's like a gangster college weight room. That's the way I describe it to people. It's exactly like college weight rooms. You'll have a turf room, and then you'll have your weight room, and that's exactly what we have. So it's modeled after kind of the college sector, and we wanted to bring like strength and conditioning, but to every demographic, and that's what we do.
That was like the most comprehensive background ever, and that was perfect. No, I appreciate it, guys. It's fantastic. So that kind of sets the tone getting into the stuff I really wanted to cover. And maybe we'll start with your gym first, and then we can translate that into other people looking for a gym or looking for their own culture. So you talked about how your own experiences both within like the college training setting and like Taylor, you discovering training when you're going through college, and how that shaped your new mentality and how that shaped your confidence and your ability to push through things. Aside from just the pure setting of like, we have barbells, we have racks, we have turf. How do you guys create that environment where people are not only pushed, but new people come in and say, hey, look, like this is a family unit. This isn't just bros working out. How do you create that dynamic where you still have hard work, but it's not intimidating for new people? Because I know you guys do that really well, and this might be really hard to put into words, but I'm going to push you.
Tell me to field it. Yeah, I haven't thought a ton about it, but my answer might be different after some reflection. But I think for me, like, I don't know, I don't think people talk about it a ton, but I think in my experiences training people, a significant portion, I don't want to put a percentage on it, but I deal with, like, in this day and age, like there's a lot of pressures, there's anxiety, there's constant comparison. I think there's just a lot of like psychological things that people go through that they might not talk about to anyone. And not that I assume everybody's just struggling or anything like that, but try to empathize with that person and how it might feel to be vulnerable, and how it might feel to be new, or want to lose weight, or want to get better at their sport. Because a lot of times you'll have kids or like athletes will come in specific to that demographic who are like freaks and that like are just great at their sport. But a lot of times it's those kids that are kind of in the like within a standard deviation pretty much, or like average. So they're the ones that tend to seek out, because they're like, they might be looking at someone who's like starting, or they want that starting position, or they want to get bigger because they can't compete as well as they think they can if they had a little more muscle mass or were faster, or whatever their goals may be. Sometimes we get those just crazy talented people in here or whatnot. We have all different demographics, and a lot of those people are vulnerable, or at least I imagine that they are. You don't really always know. We just try and treat people like, you know, how I would want to be treated in that situation, and build a relationship with them, and show them that the weight room is a fun place, and help them develop a healthy relationship with coming. And I think people watch too many movies and watch too many YouTube videos and watch too much Instagram and see too many coaches, you know, screaming or whatever. And I'm not, you know, if that's their personality and it's authentic, then by all means, but it's just, I think you just gotta, I don't know if it is. And at times it's not like you get excited, or you get like, there is coaching that goes into things that you might get that way at times. But for a local gym where people are just trying to come in and get better, like, it's just, we just want to make it really inviting. Like, we just want to make it a place where they remember, man, I learned how to train there now, you know, and I have a good fond memory of it. So I think it just comes down to like empathizing with people, and going, and then however you do that, like I'm not a big screamer, I'm not a yeller. Like, I'm pretty calm when I coach. I get excited, but that's just my personality.
Dan's a hugger.
For sure. I'm like, I love the people that I coach, and I genuinely do. It's my community. It's my family.
I mean, we all do.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's a good answer, but just like, I think being empathetic, and that doesn't mean like being super, super nice. I think people mistake empathy with like overly being kind and like, but it's because it means holding people accountable because they're asking you to do something. So it's not, to be too like a pushover or anything like that. Like, I don't know, imagine I don't have kids, or I have a dog, and sometimes being empathetic means like, holding them accountable to doing the right thing or doing what he needs to do to achieve his goals.
Lovely.
So yeah. So I don't
Hashtag
come off like
goals.
it's not the Teletubbies, like we're not, but but it's a place where you don't come in and you're like nervous to be in here because you're like, we make it fun, and we're goofballs, but we work hard. So
I mean, I also think like when someone's seeking out help with fitness, nutrition, any of that stuff, it's a very vulnerable thing. Like they're coming from a vulnerable place because they need help on it. They want help on it. So they're seeking out like your experience, your expertise, and they're looking for results. But I also think going along with that, coming from that vulnerable place, like most people haven't been in a weight room like this. Most of our population haven't ever seen or touched barbells before. So learning different exercises, learning the way that we do them, learning the program and the way to read it and how to do all this stuff and understanding what this exercise even means and all of that, you're learning a new sport, regardless of what you're coming in for. And so it's all brand new. And I think it still goes back to being empathetic, but we had somebody just the other day, I think it was yesterday, that said, that came back after a while. And she was like, one of the reasons that I'm here is because like I'm really wanting to like get back into lifting and taking care of myself and all of that. But I've also always felt like this is a place where I can like open up and like talk about how I'm feeling and things like that. It feels like a safe space. And setting that tone comes from like it comes from us. It comes from being able to receive that, being able to accept that, being able to relate to that. And like, I know I can. So especially being like a woman in the weight room, it's really tough sometimes. So relating to people, understanding that like we went through it too, but being the people that I think we wish that we had in the weight room is how we set the tone for other people coming into the weight room.
Yep.
Love it.
All that.
Yeah. All that.
With Taylor said.
No, that's great. One of the things that I think is pretty prevalent in the population of people that are apprehensive to start is they look and see other people, even if it's not intimidating in like a big roaring yelling sense. They see people, and maybe it's their peers that have been there for a couple of years or whatever it is, and they see them doing these heavy squats or deadlifts or whatever it is, sprints, prowlers, and they see the numbers that somebody might be putting up or just what it looks like visually, and they think, oh, I'm not even close to that and I can never get that, and what's even the point? So what would you say to somebody that is getting intimidated by what they perceive to be the big gap between where they are and where they want to be, especially when their friends are there and they're not, and they're maybe not intimidated but just overwhelmed by the leaps and bounds that they feel like they need to go?
Well, I think we try to like manage expectations up front, and just tell people like, I'm just really honest. Like, look, you might look around and see that, but like the culture we have here, and it's just, and the way I think we've created that culture is just by telling people this is how we do it. Like, this is what we do. I just tell them, I don't really give a shit what you lift. Like, it doesn't matter. Like and I don't care what that guy's lifting. Like, everybody's got different starting points, just like in anything, whether it's, math or science or lifting, like, or what, everybody's got different starting points. And some people start a little bit further ahead than others, but that doesn't really matter. What matters is that like you're making progress. And so just make it really clear that we celebrate each individual's progress. So I'm just as happy if you lift 185 pounds versus the guy who lifts 585 pounds, or the girl. I don't care. It's like, it's not, we utilize numbers to quantify progress, but I really don't give a shit. And I think that's the kind of we don't. And so I think that is, it's not just saying it. We actually don't care what that. So I think we're just really upfront with people. And then like, I work with the kids mostly. I'll tell them like, yo, this this whoever it is, young person's about to go. Like, let's cheer them on. Let's go. Like, hey, and I'll be the first one there. Then over time, they just start doing it. Actually, I have a quick story. There was this kid.
Oh yeah.
He's a bigger kid and just like weak and kind of in a family that has like a bunch of freak athletes, but he is kind of the runt, if you will. But I actually really love those kids. Like I love working with kids who are a little bit outcasty or like not. They're some of my favorites. And I remember it was in the old gym, the one you actually came in and interned or helped out at for a while. And they still, I mean, for a while after, some of the kids are graduating now, but they would talk about you like, where's Jordan from Canada? So, but anyway,
trip.
Yeah, you do. That'd be great. So it was cool, the impact you made relatively quickly too. And I remember it was like after school, it's like an after school program, and there were like 6 or 7 kids in the weight room, and we had like 5 or 6 racks, and they like literally the kid did like 135 pounds for the first time on a bench press, and he did it like 3 times, and he racked the bar, and like the kids were screaming, like literally kids were jumping on the racks, shaking them, and I was like, yes, louder, let's bring this place down. I don't care if the whole place falls down. Before he even gets up, he pumps his fist in the air, stands up, and just walks around the weight room, shaking his head like this. And like, I literally was like in the corner trying not to cry, because I'm like, just I know you can't say like weightlifting builds confidence. Like there's maybe no quantifiable data. I don't know what the answer is on that. But once again, I don't really care. Like, you can't tell me that kid walked out of that weight room not having not having the self-esteem of a superhero for that day. And
those kids weren't even like a group of friends that hung out all the time.
Yeah.
They were just like random kids that were like from the same school.
Yeah.
So having that reaction organically is just so cool.
And I won't accept anything other than that. Like, I'll educate a kid, but I've kicked them out of the weight room before. Like, if you're just being disrespectful to other people or just to the weight room itself, like, and when other kids see that, they're like, oh man, Dan means business here. Like, this is for, and I do, like, there's things I will not bend on, and being kind and positive to other people and inside is like one of those things I just will not bend on. So
for sure. No, it's cool. I've got similar situation with our like after school, call them the Young Achievers, and so a couple of them are volleyball centric, a couple are not, but there's these 2 athletes that train together. One's pretty quiet and one's not at all, and they happen to be in the same, they call it Power Fit up here. It's a course where you do like lifting in school. And so how old were they? They were grade 10 at the time, and they were doing bench press. And I heard this after, but she was bench pressing and he was spotting her, and she was repping out like 105 on bench. And the rest of and she's like, 5'3" or something, tank of a volleyball player. And the rest of the group's like, who the hell are you? And they came back and told me, and I was just so friggin' excited. And it changes them in ways that you wouldn't think about. Like, again, I don't care if it was 105 or if it was 35, but the fact that they came back and they just couldn't stop talking about it, and how like proud she was that she was the person kind of setting the tone.
Yes.
Yeah. For sure.
Yep.
No, it's super cool. I love all this stuff. This stuff's so cool. So where do I want to go with this? Taylor, do you have anything to, throw in there before we move on from this spot?
I think he covered it for the most part.
Gets excited, so I'll make sure we don't.
Taylor's always talk. I gotta say something about Taylor. She always talks about creating a healing environment. So like at our gym is rehab and general population, and then also sport performance. Like, it's everything, every demographic. And Taylor and Taylor frequently talks about creating a healing environment, which is, I think when people think chiropractor and then they think healing environment, they're thinking about like a prototypical, like almost like a spa sort of setting, right? Like, so I'd imagine would come to most people's mind. But like the healing environment that I think Taylor has facilitated is like, you walk in and it's like rusty barbells, like from like, it seems like you walk back in time to the 1970s and like sleds and ropes and chains and tires and Atlas stones. And like, you wouldn't think, you're like, this is a healing environment. And I think that I truly think it's the best healing environment I've ever seen. I'm obviously biased, but I just wanted to comment on that. Like, something.
It's not so much about like the surroundings and the decorations and the like look and vibe of it. It's the feel of it. So as long as it's a positive environment that people want to come to, then I think that's going to add to their performance, their healing, their desire to be there, their consistency, all of that.
Yeah, and the indifference toward comparisons. Like, yes. We don't. It's
every PR is celebrated the same, whether it's 15 pounds or 500 pounds.
Or you made it to the gym 3 times this week.
Right, like, exactly.
Yeah, whatever that
and if
PR
not,
yeah.
then I'm texting you.
Yeah. So just to go back to the welcomeness and whatnot, that's what I think. That's a piece of it too. I think it's a healing environment. I think it's a biopsychosocial healing environment.
Hey, yeah. Dropping the BPS. No, I want to stay on this topic for a little bit, actually, because I love this. And I think more people need to hear about it. And we've touched on this a little bit already, but this idea that this kind of old school idea where, gym is somewhere you just go and grind it out and yell a bunch and then you move on with your life and you get all muscly. Where in reality, what you guys are talking about, the healing environment, it's so much more than just lifting. And I think we need to talk more about that because people don't understand what that's like until they go through the process. Because to me, it's you walk in, maybe you're having a crap day. This happens a ton. And the barbell just doesn't give a shit. It's what it weighs. It's going to tell you how you're doing. It's going to give you affirmation that you can still do something. Maybe it's to take a bit of weight off. Maybe it's to add a bit of weight. Maybe it's, anything in between, but it's going to give you security in a way of saying like, hey, this is life. You can handle this. Let's have a session, whatever that looks like. And, 99.999 times out of 100, you're going to come out of that session feeling a lot better. And I think that needs to be talked about more.
Yeah. I look at training the same way. I look at it, to me, it's like a martial art, really. Not necessarily in the sense like you're grappling somebody or kicking and punching or whatnot, obviously, but it's just a vehicle that you can utilize. Like, I'm not so attached to it. I used to be. I'm not so attached to it that I think it's like the only way, or like it's just like a martial art. Like, someone finds the same sort of fulfillment in a different thing, like whatever it is, like good. Like, you might find it in cycling. You might find it in just doing volleyball. Like, it's a martial art. That's how I think about it, at least. So, and I think in martial arts, there's science to it and there's art to it. And so I don't know if it just helps me having that sort of perspective. You realize it's just a vehicle or a channel in which you can communicate a life philosophy to other people through, in a way that isn't not everybody wants to sit down and not even, it might not even work as well to just sit and talk about philosophy or to talk about how to, it works better, I think, through experiential learning. So you get to have a controlled setting in which you put people through experiences that help them develop a deeper understanding for themselves, and perhaps even enhance their relationships with themselves through the vehicle that we use, which is just training. Maybe in a different life, it would be, I don't know, maybe it'd be NASCAR. I don't know, but it's just my vehicle. Yep. And Taylor's vehicle that we get to utilize as a way to show people these experiences that we've had. And then sometimes they learn from it similar concepts that we've learned, but sometimes they learn things that are different, which actually thickens the understanding of what we have of how we can actually help people too.
Yeah. And I think there's something really to be said about pushing yourself, not just physically, but like Taylor was talking about, kind of pushing your boundaries. And I think that this is a very hard thing to conceptualize unless you've gone through it, like, the typical linear progression type thing, where it's, you add some weight, you're not really sure if you're going to be able to do it, and you put the safety precautions in place and all that stuff, and you make sure that you're as safe as you can, and then you kind of just go for it because you're capable of so much more than you think you are, especially within the first couple months of training. And going through that experience of saying, I don't know if I can do this, but I'm going to try anyways, is so incredibly powerful because it opens up so many other possibilities. And for me, it was, okay, well, if I can do this, maybe I should reconsider what I can do other places, because maybe I'm stronger than I think in general.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I really like putting like, I think it's a cliche quote, whatever, like people tend to meet the expectations you set forth for them.
That's a good one.
And then also I think it's a legitimate term I remember in sports psychology, a couple of classes in that, like self-fulfilling prophecy. I like instilling that in people. Like I'll just tell them something. It's got to be something challenging, but like within that zone of proximal development, like you can't tell them like, you're going to do this in 3 weeks. And it's like, I don't know, deadlift 5,000, whatever. But just like instilling, I think people come in with goals, they think, but a lot of those goals are so generalized that they're not really tangible. It's like kind of out there, like, well, I want to get in shape. Yeah, it's like, okay, that's fine. And I get that. But like, here, this is what you're going to do. Do this. Like, hey, you want to dunk? All right. Like your box jump is here and your squat's there. Let's get this there. Like, that's what there you go. Boom. And you're going to do it. And if you set that goal, that's like where they don't necessarily believe they can do it. They're like, you sure? But you got to know if it's something actually attainable. You can't give them. That's how you lose trust real quick. But with experience, you're able to just like, after seeing people move a little bit, you can kind of be pretty accurate with when you get to know your people, where they can go.
And the closer they get to it, you can say, hey, you want to squat 135, you're squatting 120 this week. Yeah. You're definitely going to squat 135 next week.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. One of the coolest things that we've done, and I did it at like my previous gym which was in the garage before this new one, but we put up a goal board after the latest lockdown. And it's been so cool because at first people were like, we'll suggest a goal based on what they think is important. Say it's bench just for a random thing. And they're benching 95. And I'm like, okay, so 185 or 135 long-term. And they look at me like I have 3 heads, and it's like, just give it time. And then very quickly they'll creep up towards that goal. And it's really amazing to watch the progress. And like, we're lucky with technology where we can track our progress, and they can literally see the graph plotted on the app. So that's neat.
Yep.
But the other part of it is the variety of goals that we have. So like, we've got our volleyball youth population, and some of them have like vertical goals. Like, I want to add 4 inches to my vertical. And we just got a Vertec, and it's a ton of fun. But yeah,
I might be hitting you up where you got that, because I want to get one.
It's from the States, so there you go.
Ooh.
But like, so a couple of them say, I want to add 4 inches of my vertical, and I'm like, okay, let's do it. We're going to do it through this. But the goal is on the board, and when they walk in every day, they pass right by it. And it's like, okay, that's what we're working towards. So that constant reminder of, hey, we're here to develop in a variety of ways, but there's our kind of North Star right now. Yeah. And it just gives you a really nice way of, from a coaching perspective, of saying, did we reach the goal or not? Or are we working towards the goal? Because sometimes you're right. Like, we get lost in the weeds of like, yeah, I mean, we're working on this and this and this. And sometimes it's just nice to say, like, did we do it?
Yep.
Yes or no? Right. And it's not always going to be yes. And at the end of the day, like, you could have a goal, and it's not like, you usually make progress if the programming is good, but sometimes it's just not as fast as you want it to be. And that's, to me, a good thing, because it just gives you more chance to grow into it. It's even harder than you thought, and you need to put more work in. Mm-hmm. So
I love at times I love when people go through the experience of failing. It's not fun for them, but like, being able to be a support for them. And once again, like, that empathy piece of it, like, you remember Marcus?
Oh yeah. How can I forget Marcus? Come on.
That kid, he's going to be the president one day though. But anyway, I remember he missed this, I forget what it was, a squat, like 225 for a rep out. Like, and that kid came a long way. I told him he was like an 80-year-old man at like, he's like just no flexibility. Like he's a leader in the weight room. Like, he's been there a long time, and he got really mad after he failed a rep. And he like took his belt off and like threw it and like this, and like, I didn't, like, he's in an emotional state. Like, I'm going to give him a second, but there's younger kids there. He's a leader. Yeah. It's not okay. So like he failed. And I, like we talked about afterwards, I'm like, you know, you got to come back and like have a more positive, like you can't do that in front. Like if you're a leader, you got to keep your composure in front of people. And especially a kid like that, like who I genuinely think is going to be an extremely amazing leader when whatever he does in his life, like to be able to be a part of that lesson in that situation for him is like one of my favorite things. And then, you know, he learned, he knew right away, like after, and then it wasn't that day, but a month later he came back and he smoked it. I don't know exactly if it was a month, but he came back and he crushed it. Right. Like, and of course, like everyone loves that heroic story, that piece of it. Like he bounced back and did it, but like being able to be there with him and like I said, create a safe environment for that to happen where like, it's not costing a company thousands of dollars and people losing jobs. It's not, you know, making a huge mistake in a medical profession and like losing someone's life. Like it's okay. It's a good place to learn to do this and to learn how to handle yourself in really difficult situations. Cause it's really not that difficult of a situation, but in their minds, it's very real. Yeah. And it is for us too. And you gain that perspective. So not that I like failure or anything like that, but like who does? But it's once again, it's the martial art. It's the vehicle in which you can use. Like, so now as I coach, like I just see so many people posting about like everybody I think wants to be famous and they want to be right. And they want everybody to look at them and be like, look how smart and right and cool and strong and jacked you are, to like, and that's fine. But like the more that I coach, the more that I just want to find those moments, whether it's a kid or an adult. You have to approach them obviously different. Like an adult might respond, might feel like it's cheesy if you're teaching them the same way you might teach a kid, but there's always ways you can communicate with someone that's on their level and utilize what you're doing as a tool to help them understand things at a deeper level. And at the end of the day, really try and help foster habits, both psychological and physical, that help them become just, you know, more resilient human beings.
I love the resilient word. I use it way too much. It's beautiful. Okay. That was so good. So good. We could keep talking about that for a long time, but you know, I got to move on. So let's bring this. So we've talked about from our perspective as coaches and gym owners and clinicians and that kind of stuff. Let's try to give our people that, you know, they're all fired up now. All right, Dan, I'm in. Let's go. What do I do? So let's start with, if you're looking for a gym and you have no idea what to look for, and we're you know, they're bought into the idea of building resilience and using training as a tool to improve our physical and mental health and you know, all this stuff. Where do you even start? How do you go about finding a gym that finds those values?
It's tough. It's really tough because it's like they're Google, and then when I look for a business, at times it depends on the industry. Some I might look for that first thing that pops up on Google. That's like, I pay attention to the ones that say ad next to it. Yeah. That means they're paying to be there at the top of it. But basically the ones, the more raw it seems, I don't want to say unprofessional, but the more it looks like that person who like runs that business created that website themselves, and it's like not perfect, and it kind of looks a little like this person clearly didn't have any like web design skills or anything like that. I'm like, that might be the place to go. Like the one that for a gym, especially like the one that, you know, maybe not you might be a little intimidated to walk into, but it's like, maybe there's been whispers of this person that you've heard of that like is kind of somewhere, and like they don't advertise a crazy amount. Just kind of the one that like is off the beaten path. Like I'm not saying it unanimously that's always the case, but a lot of times like you know, people who have just built up a reputation through just coaching and like focusing on that, not worrying about trying to become Instagram famous and stuff like that. They're just like coaching and doing their thing and really serving the demographic. They're being about it rather than talking about it. Like that type of person, that's who I would look for. Like, it's hard to give like, well, these are my criteria. I don't know. Yeah. Go in, feel it out, train with them for a month. If you hate them, then quit and go find somewhere else and do it again. If you like them, and there you go. So I don't know if there's there's no certification that makes me think like that person's the best person. There's no degree that makes me think that person. It might be someone who never doesn't have a certification, that doesn't have a degree in it, but has been lifting weights in their garage for 40 years and just coached people after school. And eventually one day was like, I'm going to do this myself. And then like the person who's got like the ton of skin in the game, I guess maybe at least that's what I'd say. I don't know if that's the right way to go about it, but when I look for a different gym, like when I'm visiting somewhere, like that's what I'm looking for. The place that's off the beaten path. So what about you, Taylor?
I am really picky.
It's good.
So I think the process that I would probably go through if I was trying to find a gym. Personally, I have previously had really difficult times in gyms where people are very like showy of their physique or whatever, because it used to make me really uncomfortable. Like if everybody has their shirt off, like a lot of times CrossFit gyms are like that. And I'm a lot better, I think, about that now, because that like other like that underlying feeling of like not being okay in that situation is obviously like internal. But knowing the culture of CrossFit, that could potentially be any CrossFit gym that I walk into. And like now I'd probably be fine, like I said, but I think being able to understand like the culture of what's around that gym. So like you probably know what to expect when you go to a CrossFit gym. You probably know a little bit what to expect when you go to Planet Fitness, you know? But I think some of the first steps to really figuring out if one of those or like a privately owned gym are going to be good for you is to interview, like in a way, like, you know, your first call, your first like discussion is basically you, like people interview us every time, you know, they have questions. How are you going to help me reach my goal? And what's the first step? And what's it like? What do I expect? What do I wear? You know, like all those questions. How much does it cost? Like all of that stuff is important to understand if that's going to fit the gym. And we try to be as transparent as possible, you know, like we try to just like let people know like, hey, this is what we're all about. Like we really love the community aspect of things. So it's like small group personal training, but it's like you're in like a fun group, blah, blah, blah. So I think interviewing and knowing what questions to ask are really important. So like, what's your philosophy on training? Or how do you approach training? Or how do you approach my goal and whatever that is? And if somebody's really honest with you and you catch a good vibe, maybe that's, I don't know, maybe that's too cheesy, but I tend to go with my gut with decisions like that. So if I'm feeling like, okay, then that's like the first step, I would say. The second step is I would give it at least a week to see, because again, as I mentioned before, you're coming from a really vulnerable place. So you might be uncomfortable in any gym that you walk into for the first time. Sure. And especially if it's been years, you know, but giving it more than one session sometimes will really be helpful, because you're not going to capture everything in just one day, which is like what, an hour, you know? So it's like, okay, if you come on a certain day and there's a bunch of high school kids there, then maybe that's not your vibe. But if you come at like 5 o'clock on a Wednesday, you know, like we'll have adults there and maybe that's your vibe. It doesn't, so it changes depending on the hour. And so I would say ask really good questions to make sure that the environment is going to suit what you want it to be, and then try it for at least a week.
Yeah. And I'd be careful to say that all CrossFits, like, because there's plenty of CrossFit gyms that actually are like really welcoming too.
No, I know that.
Allen-Flannick, defender of CrossFit.
I'm just saying, like,
I'm not coming at CrossFit at all. I actually really like CrossFit, but I'm saying like from my perspective, from like some of my insecurities and stuff like that, that's like something, and it's not even all CrossFit gyms. It could be any gym where like people just have their shirts off and whatever. But it's all depending on that.
Yeah. And I think too, like, you got to kind of take responsibility for your own, like, a little bit too. Like, yes, people are in a vulnerable spot, but you got to be a little brave. Like, you got to have a little bit of courage. So,
and, I mean, if they're making that phone call and they're coming in, like, they're already taking that step.
Yeah. But he's talking about like coming, like the process of getting to that point too. It's like, just give it a shot. Like, go try a place, see how you like it. It's like a restaurant. Like, go try it. Do you like the food? Go back. So I think it's I think once you're fed up enough with how you feel about where you're at in relationship to the goals that you might be dreaming about, then that's, when you get fed up enough, you'll make the change. So let yourself get there and then make the change.
Yeah. I'd also add on, just have an idea of how much help you'd like going in. Because obviously there's a huge spectrum of services that gyms offer. And so for example, like for anybody listening, Dan and Taylor's gym is very similar to ours, where it's semi-private training, where there's always a coach with you and we're programming for you. The price is going to reflect that, obviously. So if you're trying to find a place where you're paying $40 a month and you always have a coach and the program's there and the timing is exactly what you want and the equipment's exactly what you want, you might be looking for quite a while. And so just having an idea of like what realistically things cost and what realistically a good coach charges. Because a lot of people, when they walk in for the first time, they'd like a fair amount of help. And I feel like a lot of people kind of get blindsided because we have this idea that everything's super cheap in the gym world, because gyms are often in a competition at the bottom where it's like, oh, we're $10 less than the leading competitor and we're $10 less than that. And it's just, it creates this air of cheap is better. And it's an investment in yourself, right?
Well, it's been commoditized quite a bit too. And like even personal training certifications have become commoditized. It's like you see it on Groupon to go like change your career. But like, and then it's like there's like subcultures of like the fitness industry, which I think we'd definitely be a part of, where it's like there's people who truly like dive into this so much to the point where it's like, like there's PhDs in like exercise physiology and whatnot. In my experience with people who go for those things, they are extremely smart and obviously, and like have studied a lot, but there's a missing like piece between that and like practice coaching. Like there's a difference between like reading a research paper and actually coaching people. Like and you utilize all of it. It's not to say like science is not important. It's obviously important, but like there's people who have like, earned their PhD in actual like practice and coaching because they've spent years trying to take the science that they consume and integrate it into a practice and then tweak it along the way, because there's the human aspect, not lab rat aspect. So I think like there's subcultures of people who I don't know where I'm going, but who are in that. I forget what the question was.
No, it's I think it's just saying that you have to kind of know what you're looking for almost. Are you looking for somebody that's very, very technical and kind of research based, or somebody that's more empathetic, somebody that's more one-on-one coachable, somebody that specializes in group training, somebody like you have to kind of figure out where you vibe with. I think that's what
you want like a good mix of like people who have learned through hard knocks and people who have, but like also who actually like stay up to date but also with a filter. Yeah.
There's a lot that goes into this.
There is. I think of like coaching like a sandwich. It's like you have basic underlying principles, like scientific principles that are just like pretty damn concrete, like progressive overload and specificity and managing fatigue and like things that are kind of like have to underlie every program that works. Like even if you don't know, like even if you don't know that you're using them and you're making progress, like you're adhering to enough of those principles for it to work. So there's like, that's the base level, maybe of bread. Then I think the meat is the art, is the martial art piece of it. It's like you have the bread, you have the meat, the martial art piece of it, where it's like the coach takes those principles and applies them as he or she sees fit, to a given person. And then there's like the top layer, or like maybe the lettuce on the bread or whatever, where it's like like current research, where it's like people coming out with all these new research studies. So it's like you have the principles, you have the art, the coach, the influence of the coach, and then you have like the new research where you might not feel so concrete about it, but it's something that you take into consideration and you utilize in that sandwich. But it might not be like the most like solid grounds to stand on quite yet, until there's been decades of evidence on a given thing to point in a certain direction.
Love it. Taylor, anything to add there?
She's like hungry now.
I'm hungry now.
I'm really hungry now.
All right. I think that is a pretty perfect place to cut it, because that was a lot of really good stuff. And we'll definitely have you guys back and talk about some of these specifics, because we can dive into pretty much any of these specifics, I'm sure, and go crazy with it. Anything you'd like to throw out before we close out? If you have to give, let's put you on the spot. If you had to give somebody that's completely new to training and scared to start one piece of advice, what would it be?
One piece of advice.
All right,
go ahead.
Go slow. Like, your progress doesn't come from a workout. It comes from an accumulation, and it literally doesn't matter, especially when you're starting off. Like, you can just stand up a couple extra times in the day and you might get better from that. Like, so just go really slow, like chip away. That's something I've learned that the hard way over the last 5 years. Is like, go really slow, be patient, chip away, just get a little better each time. Like, start too easily. Like, start with something that you're like almost bored with. You're like, that wasn't hard. And then just build on it from there. Like, whatever I think that is a principle that kind of applies across the board. Maybe it's a phenomenon.
Mine's going to be
start fast, go really hard at first.
PR every day or leave.
No, I think, again, this is probably cheesy, but be okay with being uncomfortable, and like doing something new. I think a lot of times people coming into the gym, coming into that environment, it's brand new, like I said before. So it's coming from a vulnerable place. Like, be okay being there. And you're gonna be vulnerable a lot in the weight room. So getting okay with that from the start, and getting okay with like being in that spot. I tell people all the time, when they squat and bench, they're my favorite. And one of my favorite cues to use on them is to dig deep, because they're the two lifts out of like the four big ones that if you can't get back up, then you need help. So dig deep. Your body's probably capable of more than what you think, what your mind is thinking. And be okay being in that spot where you're putting yourself in a vulnerable situation, because hopefully your coach will take care of you.
Yeah, no, I won't. I tell them, like, I'm like,
do this or die.
Yeah, I'm like, you better get it or you're gonna die.
Okay, I don't do that.
I do.
I might step back a little bit, but then I'll step in if I need to. But, yeah.
Awesome. All right, this has been fantastic, guys. For
Thanks,
those of you that made it this far, you done good. You done real good, and hopefully there's some great takeaways. I think you guys are are you in the Facebook group yet? We have a Facebook group.
I joined it.
Podcast. See, there we go. If you guys want to talk to Dan or Taylor about anything, that's a good place for it. Post your questions about all of this stuff. And from everyone here at the Side Out Stronger podcast, thanks for coming on, guys. This has been great.
Thanks for having us.
All right, take care.